Hello, fellow homebrewers. JP here, and I want to introduce to you the brand new Brew-Built X1 Conical Series available at More Beer. More Beer sells the highest standard in homebrewing equipment, and the Brew-Built Conicals are just that. They're made from mirror-polished 304 stainless steel, and they come with loads of features that you and I have been looking for. They have a full 2-inch bottom dump valve, which will eliminate your clogging issues, while the sturdy base includes 4 reinforced legs, just like those big Pro tanks do. More Beer also carries the Brew-Built line of options and add-ons like casters, pressure kits, and even external glycol chillers. So you can find out more about the new Brew-Built X1 Conical Unitanks by going over to morebeer.com for detailed videos on the entire line of Brew-Built Conicals. You can trust Brew-Built with your next fermentation, and you can trust More Beer to find the right conical for you. Brew-Built at morebeer.com.
Great beer is about drinkability. Doesn't matter the style.
You guys are like walking beer Wikipedia. That's the first time that you've ever accepted me as a person.
Or you have a fermentation in your gut.
I'm jet propelled at all times.
How many guys do you think that you have the privilege to slap?
Somebody who's never tasted a commercial example, and this is how you know everything about this beer? Please, you don't.
I think that's bullshit.
I think it's bullshit too.
Wow. Are you guys going to arm wrestle?
No.
We're going to teabag fight.
Yeah. You heard of Junkyard Wars?
Can I get another high five, Beavis?
Now, live from the Brewing Network studios in Northern California, this is the radio program for home brewers, craft brewers, beer lovers, and beer geeks. It's your only source for live beer radio that brings expert brewers together with, well, expert drinkers. This is the radio program with a head on it. This is The Session.
All right, welcome to The Session, everybody. It's a Monday night in foggy Oakley, California. It's been foggy all day, and I don't know why. I feel like the winter solstice is really making taking its stand here. The age of Aquarius is ushering in. I don't know. I'm trying to sound cool. How's everybody?
You should be at Berkeley right now. It's clear.
Oh, man. It's been foggy. We've been socked in with fog all day. It's very weird. We've never had this all day. I like it. I mean, what am I going to do? It's going to limit
if you would have had some butter rice, you would have been better off.
Yeah. It's not going to limit my driving visibility, so I think I'm okay. Well, anyway, we're joined here by Sully, of course. The elder statesman of the world.
Welcome, everybody. Remember me from the 1990s. I opened a little craft brewery in 2000.
Never heard of it. And we're also joined by our guest today, Joe Kesteloot from Peace Tree Brewing. Joe, what's going on, man?
How's it going?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
I appreciate
no problem.
it. Where's your brewery located, my friend?
We are in Knoxville, Iowa, so we are about 30 miles southeast of Des Moines, so pretty central in the state for the most part.
Hey, how do you pronounce that? Is Des Moines or is it just Des Moines?
Just Des Moines.
Okay.
It's not plural.
We got that out of the way because I would have done the whole show like Des Moines and I would have gotten hate mail from Iowa. It's not Des Moines, Sean.
Right. Do people say that? I feel like Des Moines isn't a thing. I didn't yes and you, Sully, and I'm sorry. I apologize.
Just Sully says it.
There is a certain point where a certain age that you hit where you start adding extra letters to words, like warsh. I got to do warshing. We're in Washington. I know my grandma said that a lot too. Maybe it's like a Midwest thing. I don't know.
I think it's a Midwest East Coast thing. Washing.
Well, anyway, there you go. Now you know, Sully. It's not Des Moines. Or it's not Des Moines, it's Des Moines.
Des Moines, see?
And I appreciate it.
You're stuck.
Is this the big debate in Iowa? Is this like a thing? Like just how to pronounce the local names? Or do you guys have like a culture going on over there? What's happening in Iowa? What's cracking in Iowa, man?
As far as name goes, no, I don't think there's a big debate on that here, but apparently there is in San Francisco.
Yeah, well,
that's all we talk about. We can't stop talking about that in COVID.
Jeez, man, I'm about ready to I'm done with it. I'm done with it, man. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like on my other show on Ears Up Podcast, you can find out all about that. We're going live tomorrow doing some Disney news, as a matter of fact. But anyway, every friggin' news article is about COVID this and COVID that, and it's just I'm tired. I'm tired.
I thought you were
of,
done talking about Des
reporting on it.
Moines versus Des Moines.
Well, I'm done with that too, man. I'm done with that too. Joe, so tell me your story, man. How did you get involved in brewing? What's your background like, man? Let's dig into you a little bit.
All right. After I graduated at Iowa State, I kind of moved back home to Chicagoland area, suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
And one day my dad's like, "Hey, my guy I work with homebrews." He's like, he invited us over. Do you want to go? And I'm like, well, yeah. Who doesn't want to learn how to brew, right?
Yeah, right.
So he went over there and he did, two variations. He did an all grain brew and he did just an extract brew. So we did 2 brews at the same time.
This guy's super nice because that is the most annoying shit to like think about is doing 2 different. I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
You're scatterbrained the whole day. Yeah, man. Why would this person do that?
I don't know. It was pretty amazing. He was a pretty amazing guy.
Okay.
And it was a pretty awesome experience. And he let me, kind of jump in and help mash in. And
do
all that fun stuff.
Yeah, he let you do it.
Yeah.
That's free labor, folks. That's what we like to call that.
Yeah,
hey, come watch me homebrew. You might as well like. Is there another industry that lets you do that? Like you wouldn't go, come join me on the IKEA assembly line. Help me do this, or come clean my house. Watch me clean my house.
You're so willing to do it too. I mean, I was in the same boat. Like, really? I mean, she wasn't the home brewing part, but it was like pro brewing part. Like at Triple Rock, I was like, I mean, I can do this for free for 9 months before you give me a job.
Yeah. Have you ever grained out before?
Do I pay you or what? I don't know. Yeah, it is funny like how excited you get with that kind of like I remember my first time home brewing. It was just on the stove with an extract batch and it's like I get to stir the water. Yeah. And then that's it. And you just drink beer. Was that basically like that? At least you had the all grain to sort of pull you in, right?
I was so impressed with the all grain. Like literally the next day I went out and bought all grain equipment.
Really?
Like I did one. I did do one extract to start off.
Okay.
To see how fermentation went.
Right.
And then I went into all grain right after that. I just jumped.
Look at you, stud.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you not lying to us because we would find out. That's what we do. We figure out what the hell you're talking about. Well, what were the beers that you made at this guy's place?
I believe, God, I can't even remember. I believe one of them was a pale ale. And I can't remember what the other one. The all grain one was a pale ale of some sort, but I can't remember what the extract was.
It's probably just extract in water. You're just trying to show off.
This is back like I think in 2000.
Okay, I'm gonna guess it's a porter or a stout or something like that.
Yeah,
it has to be in Chicago area. Come on, you're not doing West Coast IPAs. So all right, so you get your all grain equipment. What's the first batch that you run through on that?
I actually did a stout, actually.
Everybody remembers. Everybody remembers.
Done.
Yeah.
And I completely failed on it. It was like a 5-gallon batch, and I bought this cooler, and I didn't have a false bottom for it. So I'm like, maybe if I just put it in some pantyhose, and just put the grain in there, it'll, I'll be able to separate it out somehow.
Yep.
And it was just a complete nightmare.
Sure.
I got like maybe like 2 gallons of wort out of it, and fermented that and bottle conditioned it, and it was terrible.
Yeah. But it had nice legs. Had legs. The alcohol term to the anyway.
I got it.
Thanks. Did you think about giving up? Because I would have thrown that shit across the room, dude. There'd be no stopping me.
You would have gone back and cursed your buddy who got you into this thing.
Yeah. Hey,
give me my money back. This sucks.
Yeah.
No, it didn't come with pantyhose.
No, I was hooked. I immediately brewed another batch, probably like not even a week later, and I was brewing like every other weekend.
See, I think that like your first interactions in home brewing sort of sets you up whether you're going to go into professional brewing or not. I really do, because like me, I had zero interest in ever doing it for a career, because my first 6 batches were contaminated. I had stuck ferment and stuck mash, and I was like miserable doing it. But I think if you have maybe a good takeoff, then you're sort of in love with the process rather than the outcome.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
sure.
I just made that up too.
That's why I never got into painting.
Yeah,
because I sucked at it. I couldn't paint a tree. I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do this. So
Alice likes painting. Come over once you get vaccinated, Sully. Come over and we'll paint. You can paint with Alice. She'll recharge your.
Okay.
She'll reinvigorate you.
I'll be like, Alice, this is like way better than what I'm doing. What's going on? You set me up, JP.
Yes. So all right. So you're an all grain brewer now. Suddenly, where's that?
You got your all grain brewer badge. You're off to the races.
Yeah. You learned the symbol, the hand signs.
You met your wife, had kids because of that.
How long does it take you to sort of realize you want to do this for a living?
I homebrewed for about 3 years or so.
Okay.
And that's when I decided, hey, how do I do this professionally? And so then at that point, I started researching the different, brewing schools at that time. There was Siebel Institute in Chicago. There was UC Davis. And then there was the American Brewers Guild. And I was able to get into the American Brewers Guild. I want to say Chicago was full. And I don't know, I think I just picked American Brewers Guild over UC Davis at the time.
Okay.
And I did the program when it was in Vermont that year. That was in 2004. I went to brewing school.
Oh, wow.
And it was an awesome experience. They give you all the books beforehand, and they all came in like, all right, read all these books before we even start. And I remember reading them all. I'm like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? But I had a little bit of a science background, so and I was super, super into it. And so it kind of came naturally once class started. And it was awesome experience.
In 2004, what were the courses geared more towards? I had a friend. I mean, I still have a friend. He's still alive. Who took the classes at American Brewers Guild, but I think it was in the late 90s. I don't remember. Anyway, but he was saying that a lot of the course material was sort of geared for larger breweries. Were you finding that any sort of like hands-on training was like, well, this isn't the giant, gyroscopic thing that I was reading about in this manual. This is a hand pump.
The one cool thing about that program at the time is they offered an apprenticeship. Okay. And so I did an apprenticeship at Ram Brew Pub in Chicago, outside of Chicago. And that was a fantastic experience. You read about brewing, you start studying about, the microbiology in it. The engineering aspect of it. But until you actually get into a brewery is when you really realize, how it all works and operates.
Yeah.
And that really was helpful for me going into it. And it just put all that stuff I read about together. And it just was a great program back in 2004. And I still think it is. Looking back at it, it still all applies.
That's good. Yeah, that's good, because what you don't want to do is be like woefully over prepared. I think for something like we've had people on the show before, brewers and such, who say like, when I hire an assistant or someone in the brew house, I don't want them to have an education. I don't want them to have I don't want them to go to brewing school. Not many, but some do. Because I don't want to have to unlearn all of the weird habits that they've learned like there. Like, this is the way I do it. There is. And this was, I don't know, mid 2008, 2010, maybe. I don't know. I haven't heard it for a while, but I think there was a disconnect there between brewing school and actual like on the ground applications in small breweries.
Well, I would agree with that, actually. Having hired brewers before, I mean, their education is good, but oftentimes you need somebody to come in and hit the ground running, and you want somebody to be able to perform and feel comfortable in a brewing environment. And if they'd only gone to brewing school, sometimes it's a little bit of a hindrance, because you want that experience. You want somebody who's, is comfortable around pumps, pressure, temperature, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I definitely look for any candidate to have, some brewing experience somewhere. So.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense now, especially.
And schooling is great too, because, then they come like with preloaded software.
Hey, let me see all the books that you use. Let me learn a thing or two about this.
And oftentimes that's actually, because I did go to brewing school way back in the day. in the 40s when the planet was run on coal.
Yeah.
No. And it's actually nice when you get folks brewers have come in who've been to school recently, because they actually can teach you a thing or two, and you have to be open to that because you forget stuff, especially as you said earlier, a man of my advancing age.
Whoa.
So, you need a little bit of a refresher course, and they provide that free of charge.
That's good.
Well, you have to pay them still, but anyway, you get the idea.
Absolutely. All right. So you've done your apprenticeship. You went to school. Where do you land after that?
So after that, I'm in the Chicagoland area, and back in 2004, 2005, there weren't a ton of breweries in Chicago back then. There was a few brew pubs, Goose Island was around. Mm-hmm. So I threw my resume out to all those places, and nobody was really hiring at the time. And so I had to go out of state, started looking out of state, and found myself landing in Cold Spring, Minnesota. And
we've heard of that place before.
Yeah. And back at the time, it was a huge facility. I'm like, this will be great. What a great experience this will be. They do sodas, they do energy drinks, they do beer. It's got everything. So, I packed my bags, and my wife and I jumped in the car, took our son, and moved to Cold Spring, Minnesota.
Wow, you just moved.
We flat out moved, sold my house, and
wow.
Had you visited the brewery before you took the job?
I did, for the interview, I went out there and
no, before the interview, he was moving. He was like, nope, I know I'm going to get this thing.
I'm kidding, and I'm kidding folks from Cold Spring, but because we brewed at Cold Spring since 2008. This is where I met Joe. So this is where this is where like our worlds intersect.
That's right. They were partner brewing with you, right?
They were a partner brewer when we first started like brewing out of state. And it's an old lager brewery. It's definitely has its challenges. And, when you see it for the first time, you're like, oh, okay. And you kind of get into it, and you realize it's not like when you're used to seeing like. So anyway, I don't want to. So Cold Spring Brewery is what, Joe, it's a town of about less than like 3,000 people, about an hour and a half outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yeah. And this is a huge brewery there. And they definitely, it's an older brewery, and it has some challenges.
Just say it, man.
It's not like when you walk into a brewery and you see like conical stainless fermenters. It's like they're bread box fermenters, epoxy lined, and there's a pasteurizer on board there for a reason. At least back then. Now it's completely changed. I mean, now it's a state of the art brewery, but back then it was definitely a challenge.
Okay, all right.
I would say it was intimidating going in, though. It was such a big facility walking in for your first job.
Yeah. And
besides having that small apprenticeship, walking in the brew house and looking at a 300 barrel kettle sitting in front of you, it was pretty intimidating at first.
Did you feel prepared? Like, this is a little daunting, but I could do it, or were you like, I don't know what I'm doing right now?
I felt pretty good. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I felt pretty good. I kind of kept quiet at first. I didn't want to step on anybody's shoes, obviously, coming in there.
Yeah.
But I just kind of observed what everybody was doing and how they did it, and kind of jumped in from there.
But you were kind of like, I mean, the brewing side of it was fairly small. I mean, it was you and another guy, Kendrick, and then Mike Knipe, who was the brewmaster. I think I'm stepping on your story here, but whatever. It was mostly energy and sodas and all that. And you guys were really kind of like making it happen on the beer side.
Yeah. When I jumped in, there was 5 brewers actually, including me. And some of the guys were kind of old school. They had been there, I don't know, for years and years. And they kind of, I don't know how to say it, but eventually we jumped up above those brewers once we got in there. But
that's a perfectly acceptable way to say that you stabbed them in the back.
Yeah.
You turned them in. You planted contraband in their locker. I know about you. I read that in the beer.
Well, it's funny because when we first started brewing there in 2008, I mean, you guys had not really dry hopped a beer before, I think. And so there was like, it was fun to, and this is where this is where Joe and I became friends, because we were working at a brewery where they hadn't done some of those things before, like adding spices and watermelon to beer. And Joe was the guy, he was kind of like my mole there, where, because I was out in California, but I would take a lot frequent trips out there. And he was the guy that would like, hey, we're going to do this. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it? There was a lot of like, how do you want to do this? And a lot of back and forth in that regard. So it was super helpful in that regard. So your craft experience, at RAM and also American Brewers Guild really came in handy in that part. The ability to brew on a large scale like that and in a company that had never really brewed that way.
Yeah.
So he put the partner in partner brewing for you.
He did. He's my partner, JP.
Yeah. What was the vibe like, Joe, when Sully came in there? Here's this highfalutin kid from San Francisco trying to come in and talk to you guys about brewing beer on a large scale. Was anybody?
I thought it was amazing. I was all for it. I think like some of the other people, they were like, "Oh, this little brew pub wants to come and can some beer, and they want to come up." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome. Let's see what they're about. Let's see what their recipes are about." And
go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, it was a really awesome experience trying to figure out how to make some of those recipes work there on a system that was really not made for that.
It doesn't sound like it was made for anything, man. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to get dirt on Sully. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, you can get all the dirt you want. You probably know most of it, by the way. But no, like when we first started looking for a place to brew, we were calling across the country, and looking for a brewery we could partner with. And what happened was, I remember calling Mike Knipe up, who was the brewmaster who'd been there for how long?
Oh, I don't even remember how long he's been
40, 50 years, whatever it was. Yeah. And remember I would say like, hey, Mike, I just called him up out of the blue and said, hey, this is Sean from San Francisco. I got this brewery. I want to bring I want to use our own yeast. I want to bring watermelon juice. I want to put spices in our, and it's, dry hop. And he was like, oh, and you have to know Mike and most Midwesterners in that area who are wonderful people, by the way. Oh yeah, we could do that. We could do that. And so totally like sort of lit the light on the whole thing, and we were able to go out there and essentially just start brewing. And it was guys like Joe and Kendrick and some of the other brewers there that were able to sort of really make it happen. I mean, wild stuff went on there.
Well, so how long were you at Cold Spring?
I was there until I started in 2005 and left in the summer of 2009 for Peace Tree.
That's a long haul, man.
Yeah,
that's a long haul. Did Peace Tree, find you, or are you looking to sort of branch out a little bit and kind of plant some roots? No pun intended.
I actually had a pretty good position up there at Cold Spring, and I was doing quite well. Yeah. But we just didn't have any family in Minnesota or near there, and we had 2 young boys, and we were traveling a lot to see my folks in Chicago, my wife's folks in Iowa, and we saw that this brewery was going to open in Knoxville, Iowa. And so my wife's like, you need to apply to there. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, with her family, not yours. Right. And you're her parents, not yours. Right. Okay. All right.
And it's still closer to Chicago as well. So it worked out both ways.
Yeah.
And my sister was living in Des Moines at the time.
Both Des Moines? Damn, dude. That's cool. She has 2 houses.
So it got me closer to my family as well.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's the main thing, man. You got you're moving for your job, and then your second move is probably just more for your family. I think that's pretty good.
And Megan and her family were great. It was Megan, her father, and Scott Ziller. They were so nice. They were great. They were amazing people. You could tell like right away it was going to be a good change.
Okay.
So.
But they took you on because you essentially applied for a job. Is that right?
Yes.
And this was a brewery that hadn't existed before. So you had to build this brewery.
Yeah, there was no brewery. So I was coming on as head brewer to help start and supply the brewery.
Oh, geez.
Supply all the equipment and everything. So we started from scratch. When I went there for the interview, they had the building, and it was just a shell of a building at that point. And they just brought me over for the interview, and I had the interview, and they're like, we'll show you the building. And we walked in, and they're like, what do you think? Do you think we can, make this the brewery? And I was like, yeah, I think we can make it work.
See, that would freak me out. No matter how much experience I had, like they would turn around and look at me and they'd see a JP shaped cloud of dust. Like, no, I can't. There's no way. Cause I just heard too many horror stories on the show about how like how heavy that, you know, the crown is essentially to like, yeah, build us a brewery, please. I don't know. You're a better man than I am as far as that goes. We'll see. We'll see in any other arena, but you know.
So Joe, how did you do that? Did you? I mean, you know, that is kind of, you hadn't done it before. Did you just go, "Yep, we got it," and then went home and threw up? I mean, what'd you do?
No, we researched different, you know, brewing equipment. There wasn't a lot of used equipment at the time, and the owners at the time, they wanted new equipment. They didn't want to have to keep fixing things. So I started looking at, you know, JV Northwest and a couple other companies. And we tried to scale it to the size of the brewery, you know, to the size of the building. So, you know, what we tried to figure out, you know, hey, how can we maximize this space with the right size system? And we came to the conclusion that a 20 barrel system, we could probably maximize the overall space, you know, overall. And so that's how we started, based on that. And then we brought, you know, we decided on JV Northwest at the time, and then they brought somebody down, and we kind of scaled it out and made it work for that size building.
That's a good.
We had to really change the dynamics of it because they wanted like the brew house kind of up front and, you know, visual coming in, but just based on having a silo, we couldn't have a silo out near that brewery. So we had to reconfigure the way the brewery was set and actually put the brew house in the back corner where we could have a silo where it all made sense and kind of flowed a little bit better around the room. So it went from brewing, fermenters right next to it. Then across from there, you know, you got your bright tanks, and then coming out, you have your packaging line and then the cooler. So we kind of had it going in a circle, the flow through the building, and that seemed to work and make sense for us at the time.
Yeah, it seems like any sort of new project, we were certainly guilty of that. Like you want to do this sort of showcase, you know, opportunity. You want people to see when they walk right in, so they know where they are, and you know, show the brewery up front at least. And eventually, it's like, put it in the back because you know, the seats are what pays for the bills. So, you know, pays for the bills. So it's like, you know, we certainly had like some really grand schemes on 2nd Street about how to do that as well. So I completely get it. Hey, I'm just curious, like when you were like getting involved in this project, what was the scene like in Iowa, in Knoxville, especially in terms of craft beer? I don't imagine it was very robust there. What happened?
That's actually a really good question, because when I moved in at the time, when I moved to Knoxville, Iowa had a law where you can only brew up to 6.25% alcohol.
Oh, wow, you had a cap.
And so it kind of limited, you know, the Iowa breweries and what they could brew at the time. And so there weren't a ton of breweries. There were, you know, probably maybe like 25 or 30 breweries, you know, mostly brew pubs, you know, less than a handful, less than you can count on your hand, breweries that packaged at the time. And so we were coming into it pretty new, right when things were starting to take off. And right when we opened the doors, we knew the law was going to change to 15% alcohol. And so that really opened the doors for styles that weren't actually available for breweries at the time. So it was perfect timing for us to open up a brewery. You know, breweries could bring in from out of state high alcohol beers, but the Iowa breweries were really stuck just brewing up 6.25%.
Ass backwards.
Yeah, like you can bring it in, but you can't brew it yourself. That doesn't make any sense to me. But
that's a distributor law.
Once they saw that was an issue, the law changed pretty quick, and with help from some of the guild people, which is kind of funny. Our guild at the time was just a handful of breweries that would be there. And now there's, you know, 125 breweries or so here in the state. So it's been awesome to watch that grow. Yeah. We used to go to a meeting and it was literally like one table.
Okay. What'd you guys bring? We brought these beers. Okay. What are we going to talk about? These beers.
These beers. Yeah.
But it's so cool to go to a meeting now. And there's just so many people. It's just great to see it grow. And, nice. The way it's expanded over the last, 11 years here.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like it. You get at the ground floor of a scene basically, and just help kind of push it.
So, Joe, are you like the big man on campus? So you go to these guild meetings and they're like, hey, that's Joe Kesteloot right there. He started this whole thing.
I wish that was the case.
Or like, sir, can just a round of waters, please?
Everybody's great.
Good.
Everybody's so fun to hang out with here. It's just a lot of fun when you see everybody.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Well, we're going to jump into your beers here in just a second, Joe, but I got to take a quick break. So everyone, stay tuned. We're talking with Peace Tree Brewing Company from Knoxville, Iowa. It's the It's the session. We'll be right back.
You're tuned into this session
because life's too short to listen to crappy radio.
All right, thanks for sticking with us, everybody. It's the session. We're talking with Joe from. Why's everyone laughing? I don't even know why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because Sully's laughing.
It's Kesteloot.
I know.
Read the card.
Thank you. Jeez. From Peace Tree Brewing, Knoxville, Iowa. I'm about to have some beers, Joe. And what should I start with? I'm assuming the cold brew coffee stout, right? That's what the first beer I should.
Ooh, that might ruin your palate for the next ones.
Yeah.
And you might be up all night. Well, you're going to be up all night anyway because of your wife's burned hand.
Up all night. Yeah, I went to go check on her. She's fine.
Is she? Can she come out and say hello?
No.
I knew that was going to happen.
Nobody can talk to my wife but me. That's a rule.
Okay, Pence.
Yeah. The Blonde Ale, I'm assuming, is the first one up.
Yeah, that's a perfect one to start with.
All right, tell me about this one here.
So that one, right when the law changed that I was talking about earlier, when the law changed to 15%, it was early spring when this happened. And so I wanted to produce a high alcohol beer that was a little bit lighter in color, a little bit easier drinking, but had a nice flavor to it. And so I used the Belgian yeast and decided to do a Belgian style blonde.
Blonde Fatale. 8.5%. Okay.
8.5%.
A Belgian style blonde ale. See, at first I saw it and I was like, oh man, a blonde ale. I love it.
And check out those bottles.
No, the bottles are they're little the little stubbies. I love the branding on it. The colors are nice and they pop. The bottle cap is nice. It's a nice little package, man. Seeing
feels
that
good in your hand, doesn't it?
It really does.
We actually won a gold medal at World Beer Cup in 2000.
Oh, hey, all right.
For that beer.
Oh, that's delicious.
I remember seeing you go up on stage for that one, actually.
That's real good, man. You got a really nice thing going on with the yeast and the phenols mixing together well with the malt. It's usually those can sort of be pokey. I feel like this beer style, things can poke out and be weird. But this is not. This is very it's very smooth. And
I think it works really well with the percent of alcohol that's in there.
Yeah,
at 8.5. So it's kind of well balanced for 8.5.
Yeah, it really is. It's maybe a little too smooth because I feel like I just want to finish this glass.
LOAD loaded.
Well, it's the first time we put it on tap. It was pretty funny. I was out doing a tasting, and we had just put it on tap. And I came back from this tasting, and it was already evening already. And we got in the tap room, and I looked around. It was super loud in the tap room. Everyone just I could tell everybody had just a tulip pint of Blonde Fatale, and I was like, "Oh my god, everyone's drinking Blonde Fatale."
Yeah,
and you could definitely tell at the time.
You get loud nights, man. Come get loud at Peace Tree.
I don't even think it was called Blonde Fatale yet at that point. So I think that's what helped.
So, do you brew a lot of Belgian styles, or why did you choose a Belgian blonde?
I've always been partial to Belgian beers. So my last name is Belgian, so I kind of went with the flow on that, and I really like saisons and just all the Belgian styles. And so when I first came on, I did a nice saison, and then that one was the next one that I brewed after that.
That's great. I like it a lot. What year did you say this? You first made this?
I made that one, I believe, in 2010 for the first time.
Right. I'm going to pretend like I have the beers here too.
Yeah, you really should.
Oh yeah, this one's good. Yeah, it's a good one, Joe.
Yeah, I can smell the hoppy. Have you made many changes over the years? Because it's also a style. If you're anything like me, and I hope you're not, you're easily swayed by the amount of grains that you can put in, or the different kinds of grains. So for me, I'm always like, I want to tweak this. I want to change this. I want to do this thing. For me, it's very hard to land on a beer and go, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to touch it.
I do with a lot of styles, but this one I don't touch. This one I felt was pretty good as it was, and I don't mess with that one.
See, I knew you were better than me. I'm telling you, that's very good. I like it. Yeah, it's really good. What's the grain bill? Would you mind just? You don't have to give us like the recipe, but what kind of grain is in here?
It's mostly pale 2-row and a little bit of Munich.
A little bit of
small amount of Munich.
All right. What about your hops? I imagine just the standard.
Hops is Styrian Golding and Celia.
I love that hop.
Slovenian hops.
Celia. I feel like I've heard of that. Is that relatively new?
No, it's basically an offshoot of Styrian Golding.
Okay.
Yeah, Styrian Golding was probably one of the first hops I fell in love with at Triple Rock. I remember like Grant Johnson from Marin coming over. This is an old time brewer, and he had these hop plugs, these Styrian Goldings. He goes like, and he was from the Midwest. He was like, they smell like orange marmalade. And I was like, a young brewer at the time. Well, not so young, but a new brewer. And I was like, my God, he's right. And I fell in love with him. I love that hop.
What an amazing thing. You called
Styrian Golding, orange marmalade. What a way to sell it.
It worked on you, man.
We would dry hop casks with it. It was great. I love that. How are you using that, Joe?
We're using it in the bittering hop and then in Whirlpool.
Are you dry hopping this beer at all?
We do not.
You might want to try using Styrian Golding. I'm just saying. I mean, it's $1 million recipe. This is a $2 million recipe right now.
Wow. When's the last time you had an opportunity to double your profits? You're going to look this gift horse in the mouth. Yeah, I think it's cool, man. Have you been doing the stubby bottles long?
Yeah, we started out with the stubbies. When we started, we actually wanted to do cans back in 2010, early 2010.
Yeah. And
back then, they didn't have the shrink wrap cans. They didn't have, we were pretty small at the time. And so we're like, do we want to buy 95,000 printed cans of each variety? I don't think it's going to work. So we're like, all right, well, let's go back to bottles. So we were looking at bottles. We're like, oh, we don't really want to do a long neck or a heritage bottle.
Yeah.
And we're like, man, that red stripe bottle is pretty amazing. And so we're like, let's see if we can find something similar to that. And we finally did.
Nice.
And it took us a while, but it's been great.
Yeah.
What's the supply been like trying to get that? I mean, is that a difficult bottle? Sorry, I kind of knew the answer to that. But the blood just rushed out of your face.
I think that's our 5th bottle changeover. So we got them from, I think, Guatemala at first.
Wow.
And it was great. When we were smaller, we were able to get enough supply. But as we grew, we quickly realized they didn't have the supply chain we needed to grow. And so we had to find another bottle, and we finally found another company. And I believe the second one was a German bottle. And that was great. The supply was getting good, but then the price was going way up on them. And so then we were like, all right, how are we going to, what else can we do? And we started looking around, and we finally had another company actually design a bottle for us that had our logo embossed on the glass.
Oh, wow.
And that one was pretty good for a while as well. And then, but it was still pretty expensive compared to your, regular heritage or long neck, and so we finally switched over. We found another bottle that was actually even better. And then finally we just changed over probably about a month ago so, and found another bottle that's more reasonable, and it's made in the United States. So
awesome.
USA.
Yeah.
When you have a specialized bottle, you need special 6-packs, you need special mother boxes. Your filler has to be set a certain way. And so
the owner's like, Joe, look, man, come on. Yeah, I understand you want the stubby bottles, but can we just not, please? But now you're invested. Now you can't change. You can never change.
Was that it? Was that your idea, Joe, or was it theirs?
I think I brought it up, and I think everybody kind of together liked it, and we rolled with it.
I think it's great.
I think it's great too. I mean, it's really unique. I mean, you don't see that bottle in the market a lot, so it stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth marketing wise to spend just a little bit more on that. So I think it's paid off.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I'm loving this beer, man. It's I keep going back to it. It's the peppery's there, the spicy's there. It's like a coriander thing coming through too. That malt's not super over sweet. It's it's a little bit lighter, and so I think it focuses more on those kind of phenols, which is really the showpiece for the style of beer, anyways. But some of these beers can be overwhelming. I don't want to say cloying, but they can be just a little bit heavier. And then for me, that spiciness becomes a distraction, not a showcase. Yeah. So I think
we wanted the yeast to shine on that beer and let it do all the flavoring for us.
Well, it smells great. It tastes even better, man.
What yeast are you using?
We're using
1056.
Dr. Homebrew.
Yeah.
We use Y yeast 1214.
Which one is that?
That's Belgian Abbey yeast.
Belgian Abbey, okay.
Kicks out some good stuff, man.
I'm just taking notes right now. It's fine. Keep talking. What was the spice load again? No.
All right, what should we tackle next? I mean, I just opened the blonde because honestly, I didn't really read the.
Hey, Joe, did you send any of the canned beers?
I didn't.
You did not.
Okay, well, I'm going to open a canned beer right now from Peace Tree. This is their Berry Craft Hard Seltzer.
Oh, you're doing seltzers?
Yeah.
All right. How's seltzer going for you guys?
Seltzer's been doing well.
I imagine it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. It gives me a chance to kind of play around with different stuff that I normally wouldn't put in a beer.
Look at that.
So, yeah.
Super clear.
Yeah. Seltzer water, dude. Come on.
It's hard to make. I got to tell you a funny story. So, oh my God. So Joe and I.
It's water and sugar.
Hold on. Settle down. Just take a break. Go check on your wife while the adults talk. But it's actually hard to make. As a brewer, you're kind of used to, you're fermenting different sugars. So when it comes time to do this, it's a whole new world. So it's funny because Joe and I actually really started like leaning into each other hard on like this project because we were developing hard seltzers at the same time he was. And so it was just like this complete, like, this is what I'm trying this week. What are you doing? So we had this like, this sort of trans-state like discussion about how to make this stuff, and it was actually kind of fun. We had a good time with it.
Okay,
it was.
Well, that's good, man. That's
good.
Good.
And honestly, it tastes delicious. This is the first time I've had it. I'm a 5% alcohol.
Well, why is it so hard to make? I mean, you don't need to go through the whole thing because eventually we'll do a show on seltzer. But what's the biggest?
It's just it just doesn't ferment in the normal manner that you'd expect it to. Like, so you sort of dive into it like, well, I'm just going to use my regular, ale yeast or whatever, and I'm going to try to make it work. And then you kind of get into a position where you're like, well, I'll load it up initially with a bunch of yeast nutrients, and that seems to work, but it doesn't really work because it takes 29 days to finish out. Oh. Just yeast isn't used to metabolizing straight dextrose or whatever you're using, and so then you have to pivot and use a different yeast strain, a different yeast nutrients, and handle it, maybe the fermentation's a little bit different. And it's so
it's fermentation management more so.
It's 100% fermentation management. Yeah. And you're like, and then you think about repitching it. Sometimes that works. Sometimes that doesn't work. So Joe and I would talk to each other all the time. Like we were like tracking each other's fermentations. Like mine's at 9 right now. This is Plato. What's yours at? Oh man, I stalled out at 8.5. I'm repitching. I'm like adding nutrients. We're rousing it. We're just doing all this shit. It was fun. It was a good challenge. I like trying to fix beers. It was good. And it honestly, this is the first time I've had your seltzer. And you sent it to me a while back, and it tastes delicious.
Thanks.
Well, there you go.
Actually, and we actually got one to ferment down to almost 15% alcohol. So,
right.
Possible.
What flavor was that? That's your winter one, right?
Cranberry one.
Oh my goodness!
We actually put cranberry puree in with it, fermented it with the cranberry puree, and it turned out amazing.
Really? And people obviously ate it up. I mean, it's hard seltzer, but 15%.
We served it at just 6-ounce pours, so we were careful of how we served it because it would catch up with you pretty quick, not knowing it was 15% alcohol.
Is that a package? Did you put it in a can or bottle or anything?
No, it was just a one-time brew that we did.
That's probably smart. Yeah, for sure. Are you going to do it again?
Maybe. Yeah.
All right. It sounds like it's more luck than skill sometimes when you're trying to handle hard seltzers.
There's a good story about that one too. We brewed it and just got done putting all the cranberry puree in it right when fermentation's, getting ready to ferment. And I'm sitting in our tap room, and I don't know if I was talking to a customer or what, but I was in there, and one of our brewers comes running into the tap room, and he's holding the crossbar member of the man door. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, and I quick run back, and the man door bolt broke, and it was pouring out the man door. And luckily we had a bright tank right next to it that was ready, and we transferred whatever was left. So we lost half of it, but we were able to save half.
Wow.
And but it turned out amazing in the end.
So this was the door on the fermenter that like the bolt broke or something.
The bolt, the bolt that holds the door
right
in place snapped, and it just came pouring out the man door. Luckily, the man door was high enough to where we were able to gravity feed most of it to the other tank while it was still pouring out of the door, and then we were able to push it the rest of the way there. But it was, we almost lost the whole batch.
Oh man!
But ended up saving half of it, so it turned out great in the end.
It's also more annoying that it turned out great in the end. To replicate it, we have to drain half of this batch.
Exactly. You have to break the bolt, and then we just have to. And then
that's what you have to do, man.
You have to put a roll of copper in your pocket and stand on one foot, and then it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think sometimes being a superstitious brewer is like being in the Twilight Zone episode. We're like, well, I woke up at 6:09, though I got to do that again. What should I open next, Joe?
Let's go with the Orange Goza, the OG.
Orange Goza. All right, let's do that.
OG.
Sully, you don't have any of this. Oh, see, I did this the other night. I have cold in my fridge, and I have them, lined up here also warm. I almost opened the warm one.
Well, let's do that. That'll be fun to watch.
It didn't go well last time.
Oh.
Tell me a little bit about the Orange Goza.
Orange Goza, it's a kettle sour Goza. So we, obviously kettle sour it, but we actually use 2 different yogurt strains in there, and we'll let it sit for a certain amount of hours and let the pH drop to about a 3.25. And once it gets to there, we will boil it, add our sea salt, and then we also add our orange peel in the boil with it. And then we also add orange extract in the kettle as well. And we'll send it over to the fermenter, and we actually use a Belgian yeast in that as well to ferment it. The Belgian yeast really likes the acidity in that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it ferments really well with it.
God, the aroma is great. This is like a freshly peeled orange, like a perfectly ripe, freshly peeled. That's great.
I think you're saving JP's night right now after the earlier accident in the kitchen. Hey, how is like, Belgian beers can be kind of a little challenging if, for kind of a new craft beer market. What's it been like for like Iowa? Was it a mature market? Did you have to sort of do a lot of education, or what happened?
I would say right now it's a mature market and everybody's pretty well educated. But when we first came in, I think people were interested in the beers that we had because it was different than what they had in the past. So I think that really worked well for us in the market. And we tried to skew things off a little bit from the norm. So we had a rye porter at the time that was made with a Belgian yeast, and that was really good. I had an IPA that was a Belgian yeast IPA.
Wow.
That wasn't a common thing back then. And so I think it piqued people's interest a little bit early on because there were styles that people had never tried before.
What was the big craft brewery in Iowa before you showed up? It was kind of like the New Belgium of Iowa.
Millstream at the time was probably one of the bigger ones that packaged. They had been around since 85, I believe. So they had been around for a while. Trying to think of other packaging breweries. There weren't very many. I think when we came out, there were a couple other packaging breweries popping up around the same time. And so I think that same year, there were 4 other packaging breweries that popped up the same year. And so I think after that, there was only like 5 or 6 of us that were actually bottling. So
Do you think it benefited you being in Knoxville and not in Des Moines? Sorry, the joke's not going to get old.
I think for us, it worked out really well. Just because the owners were pretty smart. They planned on packaging, and so being in a small town, the capital needed to buy a building and equipment in Des Moines was so much more than being in a small town. And this was their hometown, and they wanted to develop their hometown and bring this beer culture into this small town. And I think it just really worked well for us. And the timing, I think, was great. And packaging the beer, we could send our beer out, bring money back into the town. And it brought, a lot of people from Des Moines to come into Knoxville that normally may not come into town. And so I think it worked out really well, I think, for us at the time.
And what's the scene there? Is it students, university? Is it a big university town, or is there
in Knoxville?
Yeah.
Knoxville is a small town. So there's about 7,500 people-ish here. It's a smaller town, but they have a sprint car racetrack here, and which is really popular. They hold the nationals here. And so the town goes from, 7,500 to like 25,000 people, 30,000 people.
Damn, that ain't bad for you guys, man. I love it.
It's pretty nice. At first, the race crowd, we didn't see a ton of craft beer people when we first opened up, but over the last 5 years or so, man, I see people every year, the same people coming back from New Zealand, from all over the place. They remember us and they come back, and we see a lot more race fans coming to the craft beer. So
well, with that 15%,
we actually have a lot of craft beer there now, whereas when we first started, it was hard for us to get our beer in there. But now there's actually a demand for craft beer, so much so that we actually have it at the race car track now, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I feel like with 15% hard seltzer, you're not gonna have any problems. Race fans, man. Do me a favor, man. Tell me how you get this orange flavor and aroma in this beer, because it's pretty unique in the space. I haven't really had a beer that tastes and smells like powerful like this. It's very clear, very fresh smelling and tasting.
I think the amount of the orange puree that we ferment in there really helps, and then the amount of orange peel that we actually put in there. We actually use sweet orange peel as opposed to bitter orange peel, and I think that adds a little bit to it as well. But the concentrated orange that we ferment with actually adds a nice character to the beer.
How much of it blows off during fermentation? The aromas and whatever.
I don't know.
Do you add any post? Like, what's that? Do you add any post ferment? Do you like dry orange or whatever?
No, it's mostly fermentation. And then the orange peel in the boil. It doesn't blow off all that hard. I mean, the fermentation for that compared to like the blonde, it's a much slower fermentation. I don't know if it's the acidity that's in there that kind of calms it down. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a little bit different than the way the blonde ferments when there's no acidity in there. But it holds the character really well.
It's very, very good. It's probably the best fruited goza I've had.
Wow.
It's very specific, and it's great. It's great. And you were talking about using the like the yogurt extra or the yogurt Johns or whatever.
Yeah.
Usually I can taste that. And it's like usually when that kind of stuff happens, when people use those yogurt additions or the bacteria, whatever, for me, I get like a chalky, almost like a yogurt tasting thing. And maybe that's just my head being really cool. But I don't get that with yours. I wouldn't have known.
We played around with a few different brands of yogurt and different strains.
Yeah.
And we actually used a couple different ones. And they're very consistent from batch to batch. Almost the pH will be exact each time from the certain amount of hours that we put it in. And it all depends on temperature as well when you put it in. And so that contributes as well. But the two strains that we use actually, or the two brands that we actually use are very good and very consistent. So it makes a difference. We had to play around with that for quite a while.
Yeah, well, I've gone on record somewhere, somehow, saying that people should stop kettle souring because it just tastes like fucking chalky yogurt. But I think you can keep doing it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
JP approves. Damn.
No, yeah. I don't know what that's going to get you.
I mean, what might be contributing to that, that lack of chalkiness is also the fruit addition too. So,
yeah, well, it's like chalky, but it does have, for me, a lot of these Kellogg's have a yogurty thing, and so maybe it is the fruit addition hiding, but I can taste some of the malt in the background also, like towards the end.
It might be the Belgian yeast as well. The Belgian yeast kind of does something nice to it as well.
Yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but I don't. I'm happy that I have another bottle. Maybe I'll save it for you, Sully.
Well, please do. Save something for me.
What's the ABV on this again? You told me.
That one's pretty low. I think it's 5.25%.
I love it. See, that's my wheelhouse, man. Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Is the market big for Goza? I mean, I know. Sometimes you have your sort of regional styles, and a lot of breweries branch out and do fun things because at your heart you experiment and you're a brewer. But do people love the Gozas or what?
They do. I think when I first started making them, there wasn't a huge amount of people that were digging them, but
yeah,
I would say over the last 5 years, people are really getting into sours and they're getting more educated on what a sour actually is, what a kettle sour is versus a naturally aged with Brett or lactobacillus. So the education has gone a long way here in Des Moines. So
nice.
We've got a lot of fans of sour beers now.
Good. Yeah. It's no longer just people wanting to get drunk. They're coming for a certain style, or they see a style on the board and they go, "Oh, that's what I want. I really love this, whatever it is." That's good.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, I always go back to I have this friend who thinks he likes IPA, but he doesn't. He just likes the alcohol, and IPA is just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So he can that's what he knows, the style. Okay, great, let me just have the thing. But there is a difference between an IPA drinker and a drinker who drinks IPAs, right? So I'm glad to see that the education sort of cruising through. All right, let's I think we're up for one more break here. And then we're going to come back, and I have the IPA I was talking about, and then I also have the cold brew coffee stout. So we'll break into those two and learn a little bit more about Peace Tree Brewing in Knoxville, Iowa. So far, I like what I taste. So you guys should be setting your sights on Knoxville here sometime in the near future. All right, hang on, everybody. It's The Session. We'll be right back.
Segmented, demented, fermented.
It's The Session.
All right, thanks for sticking with us, everybody. We are here with Peace Tree Brewing Company. Joe Kesteloot is back, and he's going to walk me through two more beers. Now, Joe, the beer dummy in me wants to do the coffee stout first, but then I'm like, but the next beer is an IPA, so I don't know. What should I do?
I would do the East Village IPA.
Okay, IPA. Oh, yeah, that's a good beer. Let's try the cold brew now. No, I'm just kidding. Tell me
coffee in that.
Tell me about the East Village IPA, Joe.
East Village is it's an American IPA, heavily hopped with Mosaic and Citra. A little bit higher IBUs, kind of a West Coast-ish IPA.
I'll be the judge of that, if you don't mind. Being on the Hop Coast, as I named it several years ago, and never caught on because no one cares. Well, it's great. It tastes really good, man. I like it. So you said Mosaic and Citra.
Mm-hmm.
And you do some dry hopping,
Solid
I imagine?
hops.
You do some dry hopping in this, I imagine?
Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah, we're starting to shift more of our hops that are in the bittering additions. We're starting to shift those more towards the dry hop. We did already have a nice dry hop, but now that I feel like bittering hops aren't as great anymore. I'd rather utilize the aroma and flavor of the hops. So we're kind of shifting some of those hops that we were actually putting in the boil, boiling for a long time, and we're actually moving those to the dry hop, and it's it's starting to add quite a bit more to it. Especially this last brew we did, not the one that's in your hand. We just did another one where we actually shifted more of that. We're seeing much better aroma and flavor in there.
It's almost like the flavor of bittering hops is gotten so good that you don't want to waste it on bittering.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, a little bit.
Thanks, Sully. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, you know what? I like this kind of IPA. For me, it's a little too malty. I wouldn't call it a West Coast IPA. But I prefer those kinds of IPAs. Like if I have to drink an IPA, I want it to have a more malty backbone, because a lot of these West Coast IPAs, and Sully, you should take notice, just taste like hop water to me, and I don't like them.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But really, it's, and I don't drink them. I'm not an IPA guy, but when I have them on the show, sometimes they can just sort of be like one-dimensional animals. But
yes,
so
I agree.
I prefer a little bit of a malt kind of thing going on too, and you definitely have that, and I appreciate that.
What kind of malt are you using?
2-row, a little bit of Munich. That's it.
Is that the same grain bill as the Blonde Fatale?
Different amounts though.
Okay.
That sounds like my beer, actually.
Stolen.
In fact, that's my recipe. I
Whoa.
think.
You know what?
You stole that from me at Cold Spring.
This does taste like your beer. Honestly, I thought this was a
exact recipe
IPA.
I'm kidding.
Is this
sure better?
What's your number one seller over there at the brew pub?
For me?
Yeah.
Or for Sully?
No, I don't care about Sully. No one gives a shit about Sully. Yeah.
I will monopolize as much as I can, but I will not answer that question, sir.
Packaging wise, Blonde Fatale is our biggest seller.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's our flagship beer. But in the tap rooms, it's whatever we're coming out with new is usually the top seller for the week.
Okay, I feel like either you're mistaken and no one tells you, or you're lying to me. First of all, I can't believe that your flagship is a Belgian blonde.
In the middle of the country, in Iowa, a town of less than 7,000 people.
It makes no sense to me. So I feel like your town and even your state are just they don't understand. I don't know what that means. That's great. I really do like hearing that there are drinking cultures out there that don't just go for IPA is my, whatever, or even pale ale. I love a good pale ale, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, man. A Belgian blonde just blows my mind. And then
what JP is saying is he loves Iowa. Everybody from Iowa, he loves them.
I really kind of do. Well, maybe, except that one person. But then you're in your tap room. It's just whatever is new. It's whatever gets put on. People go, oh, I love that, because they just love your beer so much.
The blonde is always up there, so it's always in the top beer. So, and then our pale lager is probably up there as well.
Okay,
and then usually our hazy IPA is up there.
No, that's too bad.
And then and then whatever seasonal beer. So we usually have another beer coming out though.
Yeah,
like twice a month that we'll throw on tap.
Great.
So
okay,
usually that'll be the top seller.
Well, I like to see it, man. I think that's great. I really do. Let me dump.
So how does the hazy sell?
Hazy sells well. Yeah,
of course it does. Because nobody understands. Nothing but loggers. Iowanians.
With an S on the end, yes. Keep going.
Is it Iowanians? Do you do any loggers? I mean, besides your pale lager, but
Iowans, right, Joe? Iowans?
Yeah, Iowans. Yep.
Yeah. I like Iowanians, but that's just me. Do you guys do any lagers besides the pale lager that you just mentioned?
Just a pale lager right now.
What is a pale lager? I don't even know.
Basically a Pilsner.
Oh, really? Oh, see, now you're talking. That's my number one favorite, man. And people like that.
Probably a little bit more robust, though, right? Not as much, maybe not as bitter, or
it's not as bitter. It's a little bit maltier than a Pilsner.
Okay. Than like the traditional German pils. Right. Okay. All right. That's good, man. I'd like it. All right. Let's talk about the coffee stout, the cold brew coffee stout.
So that one we developed with a local roaster. His name is Brian Gum. He works at Ross Street Roastery, and so we we had been in contact with him early on, and we were working on a project with him to like maybe do some coffee at the brewery at one time.
Yeah.
And then I decided to do a stout, and I'm like, well, I want to do a coffee stout. And so we wanted to use somebody local. And so I got a hold of him, and he gave me several varieties of coffee to play around with. We played around with, do we do a coarse grind? Do we do a fine grind? How are we going to put this in the fermenter? Are we going to put it in the fermenter? Are we going to put it in the boil? What are we going to do? And so he was really fantastic to work with. He gave me a few ideas on some of the coffee beans that he really liked and thought would work well, and what kind of roast it should be. And so we ended up landing on these Papua New Guinea beans. And he has a direct relationship with the family that's out there. So he knows one of the guys who brings it into Chicago. His family actually owns the plantation. And so he kind of knows all those people really well. And so that made it even better. But he came up with this nice medium roast coffee bean. And I didn't want to put it in the boil. I didn't want to get any of that harsh tanning character in there. And I didn't want to do like a really strong brew of it and then throw it in the fermenter either. Because that still will leave like a tanning character to the beer.
Yep.
And so we decided, well, let's put the beans directly in the fermenter.
Beans in the fermenter, yeah, for sure.
But we actually will bake them again before we put them in the fermenter itself. So we'll actually get those beans hot enough to where there's no bacteria on them before we put them in. And so we'll put them in the fermenter at a certain temperature. We'll drop it to a certain temperature, and then we'll leave it in for a certain amount of hours. So we've been putting in about a pound a barrel.
Okay. You're being very vague intentionally. Why?
I know.
Because
sorry.
you spent a lot. It's
Nobody
fine.
cares. Tell us the goddamn recipe.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that you're being vague intentionally and not leaving anything out because you think it's boring. Because this is a topic that comes up frequently on this show. Is how to add coffee into your beers.
And since we package it, we need to find a way to. We decided we needed to bake them first before we put them in, just so they were hot. And
so you put the beans in warm.
We put them in warm.
Yeah.
And that way, it helps prevent any bacterial infection.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll leave them in there for a certain amount of hours, and then from there we run it through our centrifuge, but we didn't want to run all those beans through our centrifuge because we leave them loose in the fermenter. We don't actually put them in a sack or anything.
Okay.
So we actually had to put a keg on there with it's basically like a yeast keg. So it's got an open top and it's got a side valve. So we run a hose through the side valve, and then we put a giant screen, a tube screen on top, and we run the beer through the keg, up through the screen into the centrifuge to make sure all those beans don't clog our bowls in our centrifuge.
Nice.
That would be expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's always fun coming up with stuff to, make things work that normally wouldn't
work. Yeah. Have you? So the coffee roaster that you are using has a family who runs the plantation in Papua New Guinea?
No, he knows the one of the gentlemen who brings it to Chicago. One of the suppliers. The supplier actually has the family in Papua New Guinea.
Got it. Okay.
Has a plantation there.
That's crazy.
But he actually came to our brewery and spoke. We also have a brewery in Des Moines, a tap room in Des Moines, and he came out to speak, and he gave an amazing presentation. I think a lot of people don't know what actually goes into making coffee. It's pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah, coffee and chocolate are, I think, those two production levels are widely unknown for a lot of people. I was thinking maybe if you had more of a direct line, maybe what about using the coffee berries in some sort of beer? That might be fun too.
I've talked about that before, and I think it's hard to get them here in a state that's actually
usable and juicy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I have talked to him about that before, though.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah, they'll degrade right away. I mean, that's the thing about it. I mean, we did a coffee IPA with Pete's Coffee, and I mean, you're kind of describing the same experience I had, Joe, with our coffee with Doug Welsh, the roast master at Pete's. I mean, it was like eye-opening, like how this stuff is made. I mean, just in some instances, just spread on the ground.
Yeah.
And then, and the beans are turned by hand. And
Mostly. I mean,
it's just wild.
Even the amount of labor that goes into it is amazing. Yeah.
It's insane for sure. Like even working at Starbucks, even through the Starbucks filtration system, you get a 5-pound bag, you open, and there's a rock in there sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they're just on the ground. So that rock transferred all the way from Sumatra, all the way through the roasting process, all that kind of stuff. It's crazy. This is very good. I like the coffee flavor. I really do think that the beans from like African beans or like Papua New Guinea, like those sort of lighter, the beans that tend to be beneficial to like lighter roasts, like Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, for example, Papua New Guinea, those kind of things, I think lend better for darker beer flavors because they have the sort of blueberry notes and maybe sometimes a lemony note or whatever with like a Yirgacheffe or something, but this is very good.
Yeah. So like when you were working with the coffee roaster, Joe, did you play around with roast levels? Because when we did ours, we roasted it we used Ethiopian Supernatural, which has a blueberry kind of lemon note like you talked about, JP. And we pulled the roast way back. It wasn't even a roast that you would actually brew a coffee with, I don't think. It was like 70 Agtron, which is like the way they rate roasting levels.
Who would do that? Damn.
No, on that note, it's like inverse. So actually, the lower the number, the higher the roast.
Sure.
So did you lower the roast down, or did you play with it, or how did you? That's actually a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah, we did play around a little bit, but basically, I was going off of what he was recommending at the time because he knew way more than I did about coffee. So I kind of went by what his suggestion was, and we kind of went on a lower to medium to lower roast on there, just to get the flavors that we wanted out of it. We felt like if we went any higher roast, we would get some astringent bitterness out of it that we probably wouldn't want. So we thought that low medium roast was the best flavor profile that we wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise those higher like fruity notes just get blown right out.
Yeah, and you can do it in a darker beer, but I think you need to pull back on those darker malts too, because you can get that kind of roasty, ashy thing with darker. Like I don't do French roast coffee. I don't know if you're a French roast guy, but like I can't.
I am. Keep going.
I can't do it. It tastes too much like an American stout to me, which are usually just ashy and weird.
What kind of coffee do you like, JP?
I like a Sumatra, I like an Ethiopian Yerg, but I like a medium plus roast. I don't like it too dark because it's just.
So maybe like a 50 Agdron?
Sure, man. Yeah. Well, my Agdronoscope is down. It's in the shop, so I don't really know.
All right, I'll come fix it when I come out and try that beer with you.
Thanks, man. What's the ABV on this coffee stout?
That one's 6.5.
Oh man, that's nothing. I would have sworn that it was a little bit higher because it is so sort of like rich, and stouts can kind of do that, man. If you get a good one, which this one is, it kind of hide. I don't know. There's some that can hide the alcohol, but then some that pretend that there's more alcohol in them.
Yeah,
which I appreciate because I don't like a whole lot of alcohol, but I like a lot of flavor.
Deceptive is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you say?
I like liars. Yeah. I had a question from the chat for you, Joe. Do you have any beers that use corn in it since you're from Iowa?
We do, actually. I've done a couple different beers. Actually, when I first got here and the brew system was actually being built, I was brewing on a little Sabco system, developing recipes.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name in years, man.
And so, I wanted to do a Saison, and so most farm laborers in Belgium, brewed Saison beers, and I felt what better way to do a Saison in Iowa but to use local sweet corn.
Yeah.
And so we did it. We did it in small batches at first, and people seemed to really like it. And then we started bottling it. So we bottled. We'd usually do a packaging run every year, and then this past year, I worked with another local farmer with his field corn, and we made a haze maze beer, hazy IPA with it, and it turned out pretty well. People seem to like it.
Yeah.
What's the beer behind you on that poster? You have maybe.
Oh, that's Cornucopia. That's the Saison. Yeah.
Right on.
Oh, nice. Nice. How was the hazy beer with the sweet corn? Did it sell pretty well? People liked it.
It did, yeah. It sold really well. We just did a small batch. We did about 20 barrels of it, packaged a small amount, and did a small amount of draft. But it had a really nice character with like a London fog yeast.
Okay.
It really, when it was fermenting before we dry hopped it, it really had a nice silky, great mouthfeel to it, and really nice corn character, which I didn't think would come through, but it actually did. We used about 30% corn, and it was really nice. And then once we dry hopped it, it was a really good beer overall.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Are you going to do it again?
I'll probably do it again. Yeah.
Nice. Here's another question in the chat. This is from Todd. He says, what style do you want to do, but the market doesn't allow you to go to market with it for whatever reason?
Great question.
And why? So what style do you really want to do, but you can't, and why do you want to do it?
Man, I'm a sour guy. I like sour beers. Yeah. And so I like the process of using lactobacillus, Brettanomyces. And we had our brewery in Des Moines, and I was getting to the point where I was playing around with a lot of that. But it's so hard to have enough of it to actually package it and do it consistently from batch to batch. It's so hard. And I'm still going to continue to do some of those beers, but on a packaging level, it's so hard to do and do it well. Hats off to like New Belgium for producing a lot of great beers back in the day, and now doing some of those sours that were consistent from batch to batch. But probably some really nice sours.
Nice. I love it. Well, we were talking before the show. You have a Solera project. We do.
I've been doing some spontaneous beers over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Where we actually work with Blue Gate Farm, which is an organic farm south of our brewery. And so to kind of mimic some of the beers in Belgium, where they have the open slats and the cool ship, where they allow all the, wild yeast from the fruit orchards to spontaneously ferment their beer. What we did is we got some wort over the kettle, boiled it, put it into a, makeshift cool ship that had a lid on it. And we actually drove it out to this organic farm. And we went at a particular time of the year where the fruit was just right. And so we parked it downwind from where all the fruit was. And so they had a bunch of raspberries. They had a bunch of ground cherries. They had some huckleberries growing. And we parked it downwind from right there. And we took this lid off. I had a screen over the top. So they also had honeybees at the time, so we didn't want to kill other bees. So we put a screen over the top.
That's nice of you.
And we waited for 24 hours, went back, picked it up, put it in oak barrels, and let it spontaneously ferment. And it didn't take long. I thought it was going to take longer than it did, but it took, I want to say, about 72 hours in a barrel. And we put a blow-off tube out of the top of the barrel. And I started watching the bucket, and, I was looking, and all of a sudden I saw a bubble. I'm like, oh, maybe it was a fluke, maybe it's just changing temperature in the room. Sure enough, like 30, 40 seconds later, another bubble, and it slowly fermented, and it actually took off.
Nice.
And then I was like, well, I found something that's going to ferment, but the chances of it being like alcohol tolerant are pretty slim. So I didn't get my hopes up too much, but sure enough, it was alcohol tolerant, and it fermented all the way down. And then I'm like, well, what are the chances that it's going to taste good, right? It could be vinegar, or it could be anything, So took a sample, and it was beautiful. It was a nice mixture of, I want to say, a white wine, a cider, and a beer all mixed together. So it was one of the best projects I've started. And that was about 3 years ago when I did the first one.
That doesn't sound good, but I trust that what you're saying is true. Like
it's probably one of my favorite beers that I've made.
It probably tastes good, but I don't know. You have to send it to me, and then I can be the one to designate a taste.
I will send you some. I've got, I think I have a keg left of the 3-year-old aged, and I also did I also did a prop off that batch and barrel aged another batch off that prop. And that one turned out amazing. It's got a nice pineapple character, nice and tart.
Do you find it changing at all between batch to batch?
What's that?
Do you find it changing from the first to
It
the
does.
second?
At first, I didn't like it. And I was going to dump it actually after a year. And I'm like, I'm just going to let it sit. And sure enough, a year later, it actually cleaned up. And it was the pineapple came out in it. And it was really beautiful. It's got just the right amount of tartness in it. It's not overly acidic. It just had a nice, clean tart, almost like cider character to it.
Better than the first?
I would say the same, but different flavor profiles.
Okay. All right. So the same on the wow scale.
Right.
But
and then I have one that's 2 years old that's almost identical in flavor characteristics to the first one, which I never thought would happen. And then I have one that I did last year. Same thing. It has the same profile, which is pretty similar to the first two that I did. So I want to take that program and actually turn it into a Solera program. Take some of that wild yeast, put it into a larger tank, pull half off, put it into barrels, fill it back up with wort, let it keep fermenting, do a continuous fermentation throughout the year, and see how it evolves and changes throughout the year.
You don't want to like drive your truck out with a big pan out to the middle of a raspberry field every time you do this?
No.
Are you going to culture any or bank it at one of these yeast farms or whatever? Or?
I wanted to do that off my first one, and I just never got around to it, and I waited too long. So I think when I do it again, I think I'm going to try and send it in and see if we can bank it.
Yeah, man, you should. That sounds great.
See what's in it.
You're onto something, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's the challenge of doing like the Zoman fermentation, spontaneous, is that, people just assume they can make this cool ships and just like, all right, whatever falls in, but there's a lot of luck that goes on with it. So it sounds like you landed on something.
Yeah, they have something great there. So
nice.
That's good.
Yeah,
Good
well, I look
value.
forward to hearing about it, man. That's pretty cool. All right, Joe. Well, hey, man, if there's nothing else, we'll let you go. Let you get out of here.
All right, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. The beers were all great. I had a good time talking with you, and thank you again for sending in the beers and being willing to take a little bit of time out of your night to talk with Sully and I. I know talking with Sully is a stress and a strain, but
Well, you got the beer judge guy here. I mean, every bottle you open is like, is he gonna like it?
So good. Well, I don't know. You never send me beer, so I don't know.
Well, maybe there's a reason.
Yeah, I got it too good. Anyway, thank you very much, Joe.
Fun. It was a lot of fun, Joe. Good seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was good seeing you, Sully.
Yeah.
Joe Kesteloot, Peace Tree Brewing Company. Joe, how can everybody get a hold of your beers or just a little more information about your brewery?
We have our brewery in Knoxville. We also have a tasting room in Des Moines and the East Village. And you can get most of our beers at all the liquor stores in Iowa, most Hy-Vees, Fairways. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right. So go pick them up, check them out. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us. This has been the session. I really appreciate it. And stay safe. Have a happy new year, everybody. And we will see you on the other side of 2020. And I, for one, can't wait because 2020 has been a great year for everybody, I'm sure. All right. Anyway, Sully, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Thank you.
JP's an asshole. Justin's a nice guy and winning the race. JP does great as his charity case.